problems facing New Zealand's primary sector have been mounting at a rapid pace. So I think it's time for open hearts and open minds.
Welcome to Sarah's Country, your daily show where we go beyond the headlines and unpack what's behind producing and selling the finest food and fibre on earth to our most discerning and conscientious foodies and fashionistas. And behind every great food, beverage, fashion, homeware, beauty or nutrition brand is a series of ingredient suppliers getting up every day and trying to do their very best by the environment, their animals, their staff, and you know what, just to make a buck to satisfy their bank. It's ingrained in us to justify the logic of farming with facts rather than harnessing the simple and final purchasing power, which is emotions. We have been attacking ideology with realism, and it's like trying to have a deep and meaningful conversation with somebody at a silent disco. A bloody waste of time. No matter how beautifully designed or focus grouped this New Zealand primary sector vision is going to be, it's destined to be lost in an avalanche of noise and distraction until we pride ourselves on the common denominator, being human. Now, behind every great branded product we value is an emotional reason we're connected to it. It's the way it makes us feel. It's our ego attached to its perceived status, or our perceived status. It's our satisfaction that we're doing something for our health and our family's health. You know what I'm talking about. Luxury global brands are now scrambling to source ingredients from transparent and authentic suppliers. So New Zealand, COVID has been a massive opportunity for us. You know, that long white cloud, I think, is parted, and we can now finally see the sun. Tonight, I want to celebrate with you in the comments below, wherever you are watching this show live. What is one of the New Zealand brand stories that you are most proud of? It could be an emerging new brand or a global household name, a brand of food, beverage, clothing. What is it? I have so many personal favourites. Everything from Zespri through to Icebreaker, Savannah Venison, Sinlay and A2 Milk, Lewis Road, you name it. I'd love to know what your favourite brands are and why you believe that they have been a global success that we need to pay attention to. Now, we stayed with the wonderful Jeff Ross and Justine Troy on our holiday at Lake Hawea Station. An absolute privilege and honour to stay with marketing brand gurus. We were filming and photographing for an up-and-coming magazine feature. The lovely and wonderful Joel Rock, my producer here, was with me. Joel, what did you love the most about our time there? And I mean, in particular, the couple's incredible attention to brand.
I mean, you couldn't look anywhere without seeing the Lake Hawea branding. It was pretty incredible, but it was a lovely part of the world. So it was, and just I really loved the pool that they had. I mean, it's not a pool; it was a wee pond. Yeah. I thought that was brilliant, just having that kind of culture around that in the summer that they were talking about. I thought that was fantastic as well.
And it's interesting you pointed that out, and because towards the end of the show we'll be talking about team culture and the importance of that, because there's so much more to these brand stories than a bit of fluff. For those of you who are not familiar, Jeff and Jussie's story, they're behind the success of 42 Below Vodka, went on to be sold to Bacardi. Their advertising agency background has thrown their creative genius behind lots of other New Zealand brands such as Aquia, Trilogy Skincare, Moa Beer, and so many more. And now they want to throw their weight behind the brand of food and fibre and farming here in New Zealand. Now, we've spent generations pumping our levy dollars into improving profitability through production to ensure our wealth remains in low-risk capital gain. In turn, we've lost out on the reward of owning brand equity. rather than land equity. Let's turn this tide. I can actually see this happening in my generation. You know, I have this woman like Kate Toswell launching Hippie and Sophie Hurley just recently launching Honest Wolf, you know, new wool brands, and both farming women. It makes me so, so proud. In the comments below, just one word, that's all it is, your favourite New Zealand food and fibre success story. I know you're watching, I can see it down here on the laptop, and of course listening on demand. I can see it every single night. It's growing across the web in alliance with the wonderful people at Farmers Weekly. Now, what's coming up in Sarah's Country tonight? We are joining, we're going to kick off with this theme around the importance of brand equity with Global Manager for the New Zealand Red Meat Story from Beef and Lamb, Michael Wan, and this is following a very positive webinar that I watched today. It is a positive pivot that COVID provided for us to be more direct consumer in our storytelling, and this is through key influencers both in the States and Asia with Taste Pure Nature. Now, after 7:20, we're going to stay on the red meat theme and talk venison with CEO for Deer Industry New Zealand, Moffat. Last time we spoke to Innes during lockdown, things were not rosy at all when it came to venison stockpiling and freezers with issues on the borders in China. We're going to get a bit of an update on where things are at with venison and, of course, our velvet markets, as well as what you can learn from the up-and-coming 3-part online webinar series starting next week. And then we're going to head to Waipawa in Hawke's Bay. We're going to hear from Kate Luff, who is a lifestyler. She was very grateful for the free feed advice provided by our industry organisations and government. It saw her being able, making the decision to sell 80% of her stock and ensure she felt very supported through the process. We need to remember that there is as many lifestyle properties in New Zealand as farms. So it's great to see that this feed advice has been utilised. We're going to catch up with Kate after 7:30. To close the show, our farming businesses are struggling to engage and motivate younger farm staff, and those employed don't feel valued or that they are contributing. 2019 Nuffield scholar and high country farmer at Bluff Station, Hamish Murray, is going to join us to discuss the struggles he's faced taking over from his baby boomer father and also at the same time employing an ever increasing younger generation. How on earth to bridge the communication gap? As we have been talking about this theme of the show around brand building, we're going to be joined by Michael Wan from the New Zealand Red Meat Story after this great campaign video from Taste Pure Nature.
This is Sarah's Country.
The recipe for perfect beef and lamb. Take one small fresh country. Make sure it's nice and remote. Now, keep it at the ideal temperature all year round. Next, mix in the farmers. They go perfectly with the nature of this unique place. Add regular sprinkles of rain to really bring out the lush meadow grass. Then let your animals happily graze on this grass all day, every day. And there you have it, New Zealand, the perfect recipe for beef and lamb. taste pure nature.
A country's brand and the brands a country produce form a virtuous circle. The positive perception of a country helps brands grow in new markets, and positive brand experiences in new markets improves the perception of its country of origin. It's a circle that is self-perpetuating, goes round and round. Now, this was a quote on a great Beef and Lamb New Zealand webinar series I watched today, Global Market and Taste Pure Nature Update. And so we're going to be joined now by a global manager for the New Zealand red meat story, Michael Wan, who knows a thing or two about a country's brand and how the brands within that country can benefit itself. Welcome, Michael Wan, to the program. How are you?
Good, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
No worries. The webinar was great. It covered off multiple different elements across the globe, from the US through to China. For those of who do not know about Taste Pure Nature, can we have a bit of background around how it originated and how it's operating?
Sure. So Taste Pure Nature is our country of origin brand. It represents our red meat sector, particularly beef and sheep. It dates back to probably 2.5 years ago, when we first started to explore New Zealand's position in the red meat context globally. So, what do people think about New Zealand? How do we fare on a premium scale? All those sorts of things. And what we found was the awareness and knowledge of New Zealand's sheep and beef farming systems and what we produce in terms of a quality product were very weak. And the knowledge was very weak. And so we set about developing Taste Pure Nature as a way to communicate to a particular target consumer segment what's great about New Zealand beef and lamb products.
And what are some of those key attributes that when they do discover New Zealand's farming practices, they really cling to, these foodies?
That's a good question. At a high level, what people are drawn to, or what conscious foodies are drawn to, is this place that we farm in. So New Zealand's environment, and from the outside perspective, what they see is, still this clean green image, this purity image, and so we've really tried to tap in on that. So within this New Zealand environment, they also care about the approach we take to farming, which is very light touch, low intensity, hands off, compared to some of the more industrialised or intensive farming systems you'd often see, say, in the USA, around grain-fed production. Underneath that sits this idea of grass-fed, that the animals are 100% grass-fed, and that we've got a connected farming community, often family farmers running these farms and generating this fantastic product that ultimately these consumers can eat.
Now, I live and breathe the media industry, and I know how much noise there is across all types of media, and particularly social media here in New Zealand, let alone the States, Michael. How on earth do you start to throw money at that beast?
It's easy to throw money at lots of things, but we've had to be very smart around our investment and think strategically around getting the best return on investment. So we've partnered with a really capable creative agency in the US who've helped us develop a strategy and identify the right channels and the right consumer segment to tap into through those social media and digital channels. So we've been quite successful in how we've established that and the program to date, and things seem to be going really well.
We always talk a lot, as particularly on Sarah's Country, around experiential influence. And when you physically have people here, how can you tell us, our audience, around the familiarisation trip that was held earlier with a lot of journalists and influencers from the States with great success?
Yeah, I mean, that's been one of the highlights of our program to date. So in December last year, we brought down from the US, we hosted 5 social media influencers and a freelance journalist. And look, there's nothing like showing people firsthand what we were actually talking about. So we planned a week-long program for them where they got to engage with real farmers on their farms, engage with the herds of animals, and obviously experience the best beef and lamb New Zealand has on offer. So it was beyond just the farming experiences and the meat itself, but we wanted to showcase the best of New Zealand to really make sure that they came away with a fantastic idea and experience around what New Zealand has to offer at a kind of more general level. So the feedback from all of the participants that we brought down was absolutely incredible. The freelance journalist in particular had been on it was her 21st trip that year, which she'd been, traveling around various countries. And she said to me, right at the end, this has been the best trip I've ever been on, the best trip. So I think we're doing something right, if she's saying that. And in terms of the response we got, we've had 40 million impressions in the US market, 126,000 engagements on social media. So, that's where people are, liking it, sharing it, saving content, really engaging in it. So, that was a fantastic program that we've run. And, if COVID hadn't happened, we'd certainly be looking at doing that again sometime.
Let's talk about COVID. It's had a huge impact on the restaurant trade, which New Zealand in particular, companies like Silver Fern Farms' entire business model was around, and that pivoting into e-commerce. What have you seen that you're most proud of internationally from our red meat marketers and processors?
Yeah, just to tap into that, COVID's, while it's a bad thing, and it's had quite an impact on red meat supply chains and things like that. It's actually a silver lining for New Zealand in terms of what we've got to offer. So as we've seen consumers become more conscious around what they put in their bodies, they're seeking out more nutritious food and food that's going to support their health and wellness. New Zealand's got, in terms of New Zealand's red meat offering, we've got something really compelling. So on the positive side, it's a great opportunity or a window of opportunity for us to tap into. You're right, the food service industry globally, and in particular the US and China markets where we've been focusing most of our attention, it's being decimated, right? And some of these businesses have structured themselves so that the majority of their business is focused on food service as opposed to consumer. What we have seen, given the growth of e-commerce acceptability with consumers, in that we've seen an increase in e-commerce sales, particularly of perishable foods like red meat. A lot of these companies have been pivoting their business to become more direct to consumer, and so we've got a program, for example, with Silver Fern Farms and their in-market distributor, where we're developing a marketing program to support that direct to consumer business and to help ensure that this company is going to be around for Silver Fern Farms and for the conscious foodie consumer for years to come.
Now, on the politics side, Michael, could you let us know how positive it has been with the collaboration of these companies in market?
Yeah, it's a growing exercise. What I talked about on the webinar today was that essentially Beef and Lamb's investing in two work streams. They're both integrated, they're not mutually exclusive, and they rely on one another. The first work stream is where we invest at a strategic level in establishing the awareness and driving consideration for New Zealand grass-fed meats. We initiated that in California back in March 2019 and have since moved that out into other areas of the USA. So having that foundational knowledge and understanding of why would I choose New Zealand, what's so special about New Zealand, why would I consider it, is absolutely important. Alongside that, we've established quite a number of what we call agile partnerships with New Zealand meat companies. Now, sometimes they're individually with them, and often they're a collaborative group of New Zealand meat companies, like we've seen in China in particular. And so they each work hand in hand. When we do these agile initiatives with New Zealand meat companies, it's often to support retail programs. So that means we can go beyond just talking about what's fantastic about New Zealand grass-fed red meats and actually point out particular brands, whether it's Silver Fern Farms, First Light, Atkins Ranch, and also we're able to direct consumer interest to retail stores, be it Whole Foods or you name it. So that's where we can get that linkage all the way through to the consumer and ultimately sales conversion.
Thank you so much, Michael. Michael Wan is the Global Manager for the New Zealand Red Meat Story. Now, Michael, after you finish with this job, I've got another job for you. The wool industry.
What's that? Oh, yeah.
Let's repeat it across
Time
that
to
as
talk
well.
about that, right?
Back to our meat and wool. I might start something, stir up people in the comments. No, I really appreciate all the hard work that you're doing around the globe and the collaborative nature of what is Taste Pure Beef and Lamb New Zealand initiative. Absolutely fantastic. Tonight we're talking about brands and the value of brands. Do we value brand enough over land here in New Zealand? I'd love to hear your comments below. What is some of your favourite brands, that brand stories that you believe have achieved a premium positioning and have done a fantastic job of that we should look up to? Now, coming up after the break, we're staying on the theme of red meat and we're going to cross to the deer industry. CEO for Deer Industry New Zealand, Ines Moffat, is up next on Sarah's Country.
This is Sarah's Country.
We're a large deer farm and very proud deer farmer at that. I grew up here as a little boy. It is just an amazing lifestyle. I could never live in a city ever again. Just the big open spaces and just the peacefulness of it all. I think deer are very majestic, very intelligent animal. Having deer that are under pressure or anything like that or overstocked, they really don't perform as well. You should really be spreading them out on beautiful pastures, keeping them happy. A happy deer is a good deer. And good feed, good grass. We renew our pastures all the time in the paddocks, so we're always getting the best quality grass. Well, I guess in the wild, though, they don't have the luxury of the grass that we put in front of them here as a farmed animal. I believe we've got some of the best English type deer in the country, if not the world. And to associate our brand with Silver Fern Farms brand works for us. Without the likes of Silver Fern Farms, then there's no point doing this. So they're very, very important for us. I'm Mark Tapley, very proud suppliers of venison to Silver Fern Farms.
Fantastic to see that we have you, your thumbs warmed up and you are busy commenting in the comments below. Of course, the wonderful Chris Orange is watching, especially with our next guest coming up. And you are right, Chris. Savina venison is one of our New Zealand brand stories that we should be extremely proud of, not only for the fact of the brand itself, but also the collaboration that has gone on behind. Good to see that our wonderful friends at Rosalie, Wagyu and Wiltshire are listening and watching tonight. Lewis Road, they say, absolutely. And I understand that Lewis Road are about to launch vending machines, Joel, in the supermarkets. You've heard about me going on and on and on about Lewis Road and how amazing it is. But to be able to go back to glass bottles. Did you ever grow up with glass bottles, milk?
Yeah, whenever I was really young, we had glass bottles, but it kind of stopped being a thing. So it did whenever I got a bit older. So it's not really something I've seen in my adult life at all.
Absolutely. Well, I'm really excited about, carrying in my big bag of empty jars and filling it up from Eco Store through to Lewis Road. How wonderful it has become that we've become so connected to these brands. So what we're talking about tonight, if you've just joined us, is the incredible influence of brand equity, and when we invest in that, how much more secure we are from the commodity markets. Now, at the start of the month, this is June, New Zealand venison had been given the green light to enter China again, bringing relief for Kiwi exporters since the COVID-19's lockdown at the end of March. Sales were halted in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic, with China clamping down on the sale of wild animal meat, despite New Zealand's venison coming from farm deer. This blanket ban had a direct impact on exporters here. Now, joining us for a bit of an update is CEO for Deer Industry New Zealand, Ines Moffat. Good evening, Ines.
Good evening, Sarah.
You'd be very proud to know that your deer farmers are not only watching, but proudly advocating for Savina.
That's nice to hear. We are very proud of the Savannah brand. It's stood the industry in good stead over the years, and we still use it in North America, and recently have launched it in Europe as well. And so we are trying to make the very best use of that asset that the industry has.
Let's talk about China. How is the situation looking now?
It's certainly improved on what it was the last time we spoke and from a couple of months ago. There was a great deal of uncertainty amongst Chinese importers and also import officials around the status of venison. So it was really good that the Chinese central government put red deer, or malu, on the list of approved species which can be grown for food. And so that has really clarified the import route for New Zealand farm-raised venison. Sales will take some time to recover. It is a developing market for us, but at least we have that option now.
Does that really put emphasis on the point that we're talking about today in terms of storytelling and brand around how New Zealand's deer is very different? I mean, we're talking a massive market when it comes to China, not an easy job.
No, I don't think we have any aspiration of convincing 1.3 billion people of the difference between wild deer and New Zealand farm-raised venison. But we can target chefs, we can target specific regions within China. One of the things that we've been doing over the last month has been working with chefs who cook in about 6 or 7 different regional styles, just getting them to experiment with venison, seeing how it's different from their expectations, and seeing which styles of Chinese cuisine actually suit our venison. Of course, the common perception is that wild deer, it's very strong, it's very gamey, you've got to overcome that strong flavour with strong spices. So it's been a real revelation for these Chinese chefs that our venison it's mild in flavour, it's very, very soft, it's tender, and they can treat it a lot more kind of like you would tender beef, or maybe even some of the heartier types of fish, which is how venison can show off its very best attributes.
Now, of course, COVID has opened up the opportunity for the health-conscious consumer. And I was actually mentioning to young Joel here, who probably doesn't need it just yet, but about the benefits of deer velvet in us. How has, of course, the demand in Southeast Asia been through COVID and post with your crystal ball?
Well, if Joel is feeling a little peaky because of the winter flu, or has been doing a lot of exercise, then deer velvet will certainly help him. Its primary use in Asia is to boost the immune system and also to improve athletic performance. So, maybe he can take a little bit just to help him through the winter. With the upcoming velvet season, there's a degree of nervousness about the robustness of the consumer demand in China and in the Republic of Korea. Neither country is through the COVID experience yet. But again, sales of velvet did go very well last year. Stocks are largely cleared out of New Zealand. So we're looking forward to it, but we're not necessarily expecting a huge boost in demand in the year ahead. So it's probably steady as she goes.
New Zealand is world leading in our deer research in us. What are some of those latest research projects that are starting to get to the point of some interesting findings?
Yeah, one of the things that we're really excited about, which the researchers have just completed, is the heritability of the Kala gene, which provides a certain degree of resilience or resistance to internal parasites. So they've proven that it's highly heritable in deer, and breeders will be able to begin selecting some of their deer with the Kala gene, which will help improve their resistance to internal parasites, which will have some fairly significant benefits for animal health and growth rates and the productivity of our deer. So that's just been released. It will be one of the topics which will be covered in more detail during our online conference presentations, which will be occurring over the next 3 weeks. Tuesdays, 1 p.m.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I'm very excited to be hosting and emceeing my favourite wonderful industry organisation of Deer Industry. We've pivoted, like everybody else, to host this online. Yep. What can people learn from the conference at Gender over the 3 weeks starting next Tuesday?
We're very excited. We're very pleased that you can join us with that as well, Sarah. So over the next 3 weeks, for about an hour or an hour and a half each Tuesday, beginning at 1 p.m, we'll have a series of short, sharp presentations from a number of the different staff and executive within Deer Industry New Zealand. So we'll be covering off some of our marketing activity. We are also inviting the venison marketers to come along and participate and answer people's questions online. We'll have some presentations from some of our ag research scientists around Kala, around a new piece of research on velvet composition, showing that there's been quite a dramatic improvement in the composition of New Zealand velvet antler because of their improved nutrition and improved animal management. We'll be hearing from our environmental manager around our response to the freshwater management proposals. There's some good news in there for deer farmers, but there will remain some challenges for all land users as we come to grips with both the national policy statement and also how that's going to be implemented within each of the regions. And we're going to be hearing from quite a few people who have been involved in the Passion to Profit program over the last couple of years. The PGP has had some really good impacts with farmers' enthusiasm for adopting new practices, particularly around the improvement of nutrition for deer, the adoption of some better animal health management practices. But over the last couple of years, we have begun to swing towards a large emphasis on environmental management. So we'll be hearing from some people who are in our deer industry environment groups, how they've gone about working with other farmers to collate their environment plans and some of the actions that they've then put in place which have improved their land management.
Now, and as to close, I mean, I've always loved the term passion to profit, and you have a burgeoning young next generation coming through the industry. To close the show, we're going to be speaking to Hamish Murray around this whole point of bridging the communication gap between the boomers and this younger generation coming through. I certainly know that's something that's been at the focus of the Deer Industry Organisation for quite some years. Are you concerned or are you excited about what's coming through?
Look, we're really excited about the next generation who's coming through, who share that passion for deer, who see the opportunities that deer can provide as part of an integrated farming operation. Certainly, there's an enormous amount of enthusiasm for velvet antler amongst a lot of the next generation because it's a real point of difference. And farmers take a great deal of pride in growing and looking after their animals and producing something which is really valued in those Asian markets. Obviously, all of our agricultural industries want to be able to recruit and retain highly skilled and motivated staff. It will be a challenge, but it's nice to see the Ministry for Primary Industries is really going to be putting a big effort into encouraging people to join the agricultural sector. And we're looking at working more closely with some of the educational institutions to give them a better view of what the deer industry has to offer. Maybe not as a job with a small organisation like DINZ, but fitting deer into their broader understanding about New Zealand's unique agricultural system.
Fantastic. For all of those of you listening and watching that, I can tell you that the Deer Industry Conference always has quite a wide range of speakers, not specifically just all about deer. Head to deernz.org and you can get all the details from Tuesday onwards, every Tuesday for the next 3 weeks. Now, coming up on Sarah's Country, we're going to head to the Hawke's Bay, where we're actually going to catch up with a lifestyler, Kate Luff, and I don't say that lightly. As I said earlier, lifestyle blocks make up the exactly the same number, as farms in New Zealand. So, of course, feed advice service should be made available to them just as much. And Kate sought out industry organisation advice, which she said was a godsend for her in the Hawke's Bay drought. She encourages all landowners to seek out the same support. We're going to be joined by Kate after the break.
This is Sarah's Country.
Balance has its own team of innovation specialists. It's our job to lead the way, working with some of the most cutting-edge science and research. We've got partnerships with some of the best suppliers in the world, so our farmers get the very best products for New Zealand farms.
And in every region across the country, the conditions are very different, and farmers and growers' needs are too.
That's why we're always looking for solutions that are just right, like here at our Huntly Service Centre.
And here in Canterbury, we've got a self-service silo, so I can pick up fat when it suits me.
And here in Morrinsville, we've got a world-class mill. That means that we can safely deliver our customers with the freshest, highest quality feed and minerals.
It's about putting the customer first because that's what drives our business.
We've been focusing on faster turnaround of orders. We've got to get the right products to the right places at the right times.
Here in Taranaki, we've got New Zealand's only urea manufacturing plant. It's where we create our premium sustained fertiliser.
We're supplying nationwide and working locally. By getting to know you and what you want to achieve, we can help you get there.
And with the new My Balance platform, Balance has put my farm at my fingertips.
In fact, we offer support in all sorts of ways, sharing the best nutrition practice with farming families across the country. Whether we're talking about animal health, farm productivity,
or looking after our natural environment, sustainability underpins everything we do. We use our local expertise and the latest tools to help farmers and growers navigate the changing regulations, so you can leave your farm in great shape for the future.
And we can be really accurate, avoiding areas like wetlands and waterways with our award-winning Spread Smart tech. It makes the job far safer, more efficient, and gives you the best results.
When you've got access to that kind of know-how, you've got the support you need to make sure you're farming sustainably. It's that kind of thinking that'll keep us going for generations to come.
Together creating the best soil and feed on earth.
Now, when it comes to the dry conditions around the country, everybody's situations have been very individual and different. So has their feed supply. Now, we've talked a lot on Sarah's Country around this free feed planning advice the government has sunken money into. Critical of it or not, it has certainly been a lifesaver for many farmers and including lifestylers. Did you know that there's the same amount of lifestyle blocks there is farms in New Zealand? And of course, they need advice just as much. Very excited to have on the show from Central Hawke's Bay, near Waipawa, Kate Luff. Welcome to Sarah's Country, Kate.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Now, give us just a bit of a background on your property and what sort of livestock you've been running there.
So we've got 10.2 hectares, 25 acres, and I've got a flock of breeding ewes. I run polled Dorsets, crossed with a Dorper ram, sorry. So we have some really interesting coloured lambs every year, a little bit of a patchwork situation. And most years I raise a few calves, so we have usually sort of 10 to 20 cattle, and of course a wee collection of ponies and horses.
And so for you, when that dry started to set in, do you sort of lean on some of the farming community for advice to lead you to the path of picking up the free advice feed lines?
Sort of a bit of both, to be honest. I'm really lucky in the sense that I've got some really good friends who are farmers, and so I get advice and talk to them all along. But when this situation started to look really grim and I realised that I didn't think I was going to have enough feed, but I wanted to be really sure, that's when I started asking some questions about the feed planning service and got directed towards the Beef and Lambs 0800 number, and I called that and had a great chat with Mark Harris, and it was very quick, it was very simple, and it gave me the information I needed to make some good decisions. And as a result, we sold most of our cattle, and I've now got plenty of baleage which should last for the rest of winter.
So what sort of tools did Mark, be able to give to you that you could calculate these things as opposed to guessing?
So what we did, we went through it on the phone initially. He filled it in at his end, so he just uses a spreadsheet. It's pretty standard. so we went through that, and he took the numbers from me and he talked me through it, and then he said, look, I'll send it to you and then you can play with it. So you can adjust your livestock numbers and that will enable you to see what you'll be able to carry through. So he emailed it to me that night, and I did my little fiddling around with it and got to a point where it looked like it was going to work.
I find it really interesting because measuring of feed is something new to me, as well as new to a lot of farmers as well, believe it or not, Kate. Was it quite the exercise to be able to learn how to measure feed?
I mean, I've always, I suppose, been mindful of having enough feed in front of us, but this year has just been extraordinary. So we cut our own baleage here, and most years we use less than half of what's cut, and the rest goes off the property. And this year, by May, we had already used that amount that we would normally use in a whole year. So, yeah, I knew we weren't going to have enough in front of us, and it was enough to sort of prompt me to get more information and to use the tools available.
Certainly. So in regards to your advice to other people that are sitting there trying to navigate this themselves, how do you believe that people can get amongst going into the spring?
Oh, I think if you're not sure, then reach out and ask for help. And there's so much good information available. I've been telling people to go on to the Drought Hub, which is on Hawke's Bay Regional Council's website. There's loads of information available there. You don't have to call any 0800 numbers. There's lots of information sheets and stuff for people to just do their own reading and their own research. But whether you've got 2 ponies on rented grazing, leased grazing, whether you've got a 20 hectare property, you need to be sure that you've got enough feed in front of you to look after those animals and ensure that they're properly looked after. And it's not going to work if people are just sort of going from, grab 10 bales of hay here and find another 10 bales of hay over here. You've really got to have a plan.
And we don't know how much longer this will continue for as well. So thank you so much, Kate Luff from Central Hawke's Bay near Waipawa, for taking the time to join us. Now, Kate has been the recipient of the wonderful Mark Harris from Beef and Lamb and the free feed service that Beef and Lamb is, of course, DINZ offering. If you want to take up some of this advice, the 0800 numbers Beef and Lamb and 0800 for DINZ, but also check out the feed notice board on Agri HQ. There's also a page there where you can register if you've got feed to donate as well. So make sure if you don't get yourself into a pickle, there is people there to help avoid that shutdown from overwhelm when everything seems to be getting on top of you. Sometimes it's simply adding in some numbers into the columns of a spreadsheet and working it out. Interesting talking to Kate there around feed budgeting. Of course, I'm not actively farming, but I hear my ear is very close to the ground at grassroots. And I certainly would love to know your thoughts. Do you think that we have come a long way with regards to sheep and beef farmers in particular, learning from our dairy farmers on things like feed budgeting? There is a lot of interesting things around weighing crops and how you go about it and plugging it into computers. Have we come far enough, or are we still very much, oh no, I can see the feed in front of me, she'll be right, move a break whenever it suits type thing? What are your thoughts? I'd love to know. Have we got further to go? I'm certainly enjoying the Beef and Lamb winter grazing marketing campaigns we're seeing everywhere. And there's a lot of great things in there that seem simple, yet not everyone's doing it. So lean on those people this winter. If they're not doing it and it's not up to scratch and it's beside the road, please, 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 on behalf of me and the rest of your rural community, as I've said here in Ceres Country, it takes one photo. So let's improve and grow together, and that's what Ceres Country is all about. I'm very excited about our next guest coming up after the break. 2019 Nuffield scholar Hamish Murray coming to us from the beautiful part of the world, which is the Bluff Station. And we're going to talk about bridging that communication gap. All that on Ceres Country up next.
This is Sarah's Country.
There is an increasing breakdown in the communication between young and older farmers, and both are struggling to get what they want. Do you know it well? We've all heard the scenarios. And of course, this generation of farmers were raised by parents who lived through World War II. Many audience members of Sarah's Country, I know, which shaped their childhoods and where no one spoke about the emotional stuff, fear and weakness. No positive feedback was given because, of course, what that would lead to would be a big head. But times have changed. And there's now a contrast in the generation entering the workforce, or let alone the ones we want to attract in desperately into the workforce. And we need to give this growing constant stream of feedback via social media and online, because that's how our lives have become so very different. So joining us tonight is 2019 Nuffield scholar Hamish Murray, talking about his Nuffield Scholarship Report around this topic. It's an interesting one, Hamish, because, your parents could be watching this. How do they feel about you approaching a topic like this for your Nuffield?
It stemmed from, being a family business and sensing those changes and things that are happening, that communication with my father and then relaying that to staff on farm and the frustrations that I could see between the different generations. So it's a very personal thing, and I don't think my father would have any problem with that. It's as things change and develop, it's all about how we can improve and be better. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and knowing Chid personally, I totally understand where you're coming from. He's certainly not one to hold back his opinion. So now tell us about your journey, which comes through the wonderful experience around the world with Nuffield, and what you could take from overseas and what you learnt from here at home.
Yeah, well, it started with me. The high country is one of the last bastions of a good, keen, hardworking bloke, and things that I was finding, now running our business, it was finding harder and harder to attract people to a business like ours. Despite the romance that goes with the high country, and rather than think outwardly, not the right people, I decided to focus on what made businesses more attractive, or how did they engage and motivate their staff, and so I was lucky enough through the Nuffield travel to observe businesses around the world in different industries other than agriculture and see what they were doing. So it stemmed from a very personal problem, and you got to look at other businesses.
In parts like Silicon Valley and the tech industry, what did you learn from there?
Yeah, vastly different. But the thing that was most fascinating for me out of visiting the Silicon Valley was a chance encounter I had with a couple of game developers, computer game developers, and it was through the discussion I had with them around how they incorporate feedback into their game development that is all part of keeping people engaged and motivated, but also kind of addicted, but they provided an enjoyable experience that meant that people kept developing. And so thinking about that and then taking those ideas and thinking about how did that differ for a farm business, and so that's where I came up with this, where we discussed this idea of feedback and how crucial it is in keeping people engaged. But don't get me wrong, it's not around. So when I relate that to our younger staff and people. It's not around tell me how good I am. It's merely a fact of knowing where a person is in their development. It's a competitive world out there, and these younger generations want to know how they're achieving, how they can get better and develop that. And so they do that through the feedback that's around them. And so I realized my father and even myself weren't very good at giving feedback, and it was a skill that I needed to work on, and that we try to work on with our team. So learning the skills around that was one of the insights I got from the Silicon Valley anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's certainly something that we talked about lots on the Will to Live tour, Hamish, was around the fact that you can never actually give somebody a big enough head in the rural sector, especially in New Zealand, the way that we're so bloomin' humble, that it can only lead to better staff retention. I mean, is there some of those things that you found through that in terms of that, return on investment, things like feedback?
Yeah, hugely. We're term as farmers and as people, we're emotionally stingy, if you get so it's hugely important to reward people and keep them engaged and motivated, feeling valued. But then also equally, it's equally important to be able to deliver feedback in a way that lands correctly with someone as well. So there's two sides to the story, because we've all had situations where our emotions have got in the way of delivering what was an effective piece of feedback when the intention was really to help or grow that person, and our emotions have got in the way of delivering that well. So there's two sides to the feedback element, and as an individual myself, understanding how to deliver that is a really key skill to learn and to master.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I read something, there's the Good Boss campaign that is a collaborative industry-wide thing with Federated Farmers, DINZ, et cetera. And a lot of people are leaving the industry, not for the hard work, but how they're treated. And then to hear on Talkback, a farmer ring up and say, there's plenty of jobs here, but just expect to be told what to do. Like, when are we going to get it?
Yeah, that's a really crucial one. You touch on that idea of being told what to do. Our whole education system these days is based around teaching kids and people how to solve for their own problems. In the old days, no disrespect, but people were taught to were rote learning books and things. You learnt your answer that you recited in your exam. These days, it's around learning and teaching kids where to find the right information and what's credible and how to solve for their own problems. We're in an age of information abundance. So, with that in mind, we're thinking about the younger generation coming onto farm who have had a schooling system that's grown up where they've solved for their own problems, and all of a sudden they get a grumpy old boss who tells them, do this, do this, do this, and do it this way, rather than why they're doing something and coaches them how to actually achieve it for themselves. It's no wonder that they can get lost in the system. And so I suppose my plea is, as employers and as leaders in agriculture, we have to learn these skills and think about how we can change and adapt our businesses to make them more attractive and engaging and motivating.
And lastly, Hamish, while I've got you here, because you're an absolute classic example of this, and I've been very critical of the sheep and beef industry in regards to career pathways in comparison to, dairy, horticulture, let alone the trades, who have done a very good job in terms of apprenticeships. In sheep and beef, there's a lot of passionate young fellas and women who want to be shepherds, yet the barriers to start are so high with needing trained dogs and knowing how to ride and shoe a horse and ride a motorbike. What would you like to see in terms of opening up that pathway for those passionate people wanting to have the romance of the high country?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one I don't know the answer to. I really don't know the answer to. So I think personally about how it might apply. And so this, as someone who is passionate about the high country and wants to see people engaged and enjoying that, it's support as an employer to help take on an apprentice and to give them, understandably, our business has a set number of employees. We can't afford to take on more than we need to, sort of thing. But the coaching and the education that goes with providing that sort of support to somebody is huge. I really like the cadet farm and those models. I think they're great. I just don't know that there's enough of them and enough people with the coaching skills, and I'm sure there are people with the coaching skills, but to have them all in the right places is, I think, the right pathway to bridge that gap at the moment. Sorry, I don't know the answer.
Just before you leave, I've just got a funny story that once a young man called Tony Glynn told me. He used to work for a man that you would have known called Roy Cameron up the Clarence Reserve, Hamish. And he said, I need you to ride out the back there and just check if there's any fuel in that dozer, which was an 8-hour ride. And he rode back another 8 hours and he said, yep, there's fuel in it. And Roy said, yeah, I thought there was.
Yeah, I can think of the country that they're covering, and it's probably a testament to the time or the bosses of that age. He was testing the man and to see his medal, and it's not kind of what we want to do, but I can understand how it happens.
Yeah. And in your part of the world, some very, very tough country. Thank you so much, Hamish Murray, for taking the time to join us there from the Bluff station, and the last in our series of the 2019 Rural Leaders, and their reports that you can get at ruralleaders.co.nz. That's all we've got time for tonight here on Serious Country. And if this is the first time you've joined us, thank you so much for taking the time to be a part of what is the growing new show about the matters that matter most to farming food and fibre at the bottom of the world, an absolute paradise. Make sure you check out Serious Country wherever you get your podcasts. You can listen to the interviews on demand, as well as check out all the full-length articles from the most experienced agricultural journalists in this country at Farmers Weekly and the newspapers in your rural boxes on Monday. I love sending you, as during the show actually, Joel, I got a lovely email. I love emails, Joel. Do I give you good feedback? I'm just double checking while we're still live.
Yeah, no, that's not me. That's nothing. There we go. Yeah, I get lovely feedback, mostly whenever I do things right and don't just cut the black. But
Thank you so much for all your feedback, sending me emails, sarah@perryandmedia.com. I tell you what, it certainly doesn't give me a big head. It keeps me going. I absolutely love it. And if you've got feedback on how we can improve, we'd absolutely love that as well.
This is Sarah's Country.